Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, and XRP as a topic of today as we go over the big four assets in cryptocurrency land, doing a top-down analysis on the higher term timeframes. We actually haven't updated on this in the past couple of weeks, so I wanted to do, I guess, just a new video on these major assets and kind of where things are likely headed over the next couple of months, especially with this past weeks of price action in mind. Before we get to that, I should actually let you know that we do have our New Year's sale starting actually today. It'll be running for a week with the code 2025 for 20% off of any one of the programs or services in the Teachable link in the description below. I'll upload a video probably later today or tomorrow going a little bit more in-depth explanation with that. But again, the code is 2025 if you do want to get a head start on that for the new year. All right, sweet. So let's start off right here with Solana. And Solana, we'll start with the lower term timeframes first, and then we'll work our way up. For right now, on the daily time frame, we do see that Solana has had a very nice bounce, but it is right at a major area of interest here, which is a 50% retracement level from the low of about 175 to the high of about 265. So that is a pretty good area for at least a pullback attempt, which I do think that we're getting a little bit as of right now. And on top of that, we do see that the daily RSI is going to be having potential for hidden bearish divergence. If it does put in a local high right here, which would imply that this thing, does come back down. And as we'll be going over a little bit later, probably going to put in a higher low. But just compare this right here. The daily RSI is already higher than what we did see on the 7th of December when Solana was trading it's trading at like 240, 250. So, that's going to be available as long as you're below that level, essentially. While I am saying that the 50% level right here is very likely a good potential pullback region, theoretically, it doesn't necessarily have to. If you see Solana close above about 220, which is that 50% level, we could see it come up to about 230 and then probably play out a pullback from there. But for right now, I would have a little bit of caution that, it could very easily pull back right here, especially with daily stochastic momentum getting into the critical zone. Not today, but tomorrow it will be. So getting a little bit more hot right there, especially as the 12-hour already starts to kind of curl around. So, if it does want to correct here, like I said, I don't think there's going to be new lows, or at least if there are new lows, something completely different is happening. Why do I say that? Because when we go over here to the monthly time frame, there is something just, in my opinion, very, very obvious, which is, again, focusing on this red moving average right here, the 5 exponential. We see reconnections with that in all training moves for Solana. And you can see that Solana essentially opened up on it for the month of January, meaning that, if Solana is bullish, we really don't expect lower lows than what we already have for Solana during this corrective period. Again, it can come back and test around those lows. We'll go over areas of interest if that does indeed happen. But we shouldn't really be expecting any new lows, because what this also would imply is that, especially if Solana even just trades below the low, or even this month's low, January's low, which is not even like the low, that's closer to like 185, then this starts to get confirmed as like a local high right here, and you're very likely looking at price action back down to like 135, 140-ish region, maybe even lower than that over time. But again, I would say with the way that things are shaping up right here, and with kind of the cycle in mind and everything like that, I think it's a lot less likely. I think it's generally better to kind of be betting on upside. And so that's why I do say that any sort of a pullback here likely does formulate a higher low. So the question becomes, where would that potential higher low come in around? Well, we can use the fibs on the other side for that as well. Obviously, the more close one, the more proximal one is the 618 here at about 209. I think that'd be pretty optimistic to be expecting a higher low there. Possible, yes, but I do think that would be very, very optimistic. And then, of course, the 786 right here at about 195, let's call it, which would be a higher low. So, that would still kind of satisfy our prior criteria. But yeah, ultimately, Solana very likely primed, at some point, maybe not this month, but perhaps February, March, to make new all-time highs. I would say, which I know is kind of a crazy statement with the timing in mind, but where would the areas of interest be if it does, and how will you know if it is? Well, if it trades back above 245, then yeah, you're in breakout mode as far as I'm concerned, and you're very likely looking at 300, 320-ish region on that move, probably finding a local high somewhere around 350. So yeah. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into XRP. XRP is relatively holding up pretty fucking well here, to be honest. But starting off with the daily range, we can see that the low side of the range still holds at about $2, or just under $2 to be fair. And the top side of the range coming in around about 162, 163 region. If we draw a similar fib for this one as we did on the prior one, we can see that XRP actually did bounce. Well, let me actually do a bearish retracement on this just for the sake of it right here. But we can see, the 618 was hit on yesterday's high. So again, just like we saw with Solana earlier, this is shaping up to very likely be good over the next couple months, but is this potentially putting in a local high right here, and it's going to swing back down around, probably not make new lows, but a higher low, and then try again to the upside. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now for XRP. Looking at daily momentum, we can see that daily time frame very similar to what we saw in Solana. 12-hour time frame also kind of leading as well, with that already turning to the downside, and with potential hidden bearish divergence between this high at 240, let's call it, versus the highs over here at about 270. So, pretty big percentage difference right there. It is going to be available. So again, the question is where could a pullback potentially come? And in this case, I would say, your area of interest to the downside, or first major area of interest to the downside, is going to be about like 3 or so. 3. Holy shit, my brain is broken. 223, 224-ish region. If things come a little bit lower than there, maybe like 212, 213, somewhere in that pocket there. Again, it would still be a higher low. It does set this thing up to very likely break to new all-time highs, maybe in the next couple months. As far as that goes, where would the areas of interest be? Well, still kind of same as before here, actually. Let me get rid of this and let's just go for this. First major area of interest upon breaking above about 245 on, let's call it, a daily closing basis, or especially a weekly closing basis. You're probably looking somewhere around $3.50. Above there, areas of interest start to get pretty crazy. 4.5 and 5 would be the next couple major ones. I expect that at least one of those will be hit over time, but you never know with XRP. It always does some crazy shit, both the upside and the downside, to be fair. And it is very much prone to just giving up on all of its rallies at any moment in time. So how would you know that that's happening? If this thing comes back down again below the current lows of about $2, yeah, problems here are very likely back down to like 1.5, maybe even lower than that. But again, given the market cycle and everything, I do think it's more likely to put in a higher low here and then try higher. Anyways, moving on now into, let me just make sure that I got all my notes there. Okay, yes, we got that. And also it should be known for XRP, while the 5-day is closing tonight, if you actually do see it close above 243, that would be a good indication that I'll probably be wrong about a pullback first, and it'll very likely just be continuation first, because this is essentially setting up here for a higher low. I mean, that's, again, if you're playing the trend, it's quite clear and obvious right there. So makes it rather obvious. So again, bullish as long as you're above that higher low, which is about $2. Short term, I guess there could be a threat of an extension of this upside move. Again, if today very specifically closes above 243 area, see something like that. So yeah. Anyways, moving on now, we have Ethereum. Ethereum also rather interesting here too on the daily time frame. Just going over the lower term time frames first. That same range coming up to very close to the same levels that we see on the other couple assets that we've looked at already. We can see that Ethereum is essentially around the 50% retracement level right now. It actually did trade a little bit above there. I would put the range high here, however, a little bit higher at about 3,700, right in alignment with the 618 Fibonacci. Ultimately, though, it's very similar here on Ethereum as I do see on the other three. I know that sounds like a fucking broken record, but this market all just moves together with each other anyways, for the most part. At least the big ones typically do. So, similar on this one. Could it spike up to 3,700? Perhaps yes. Definitely possible, obviously. But this would be a damn good area for a bit of a pullback. Again, pullback very likely leads into a higher low, but we're already seeing medium-term timeframe oscillators threaten a turnaround right here. The 12-hour will turn down below 36.05 right now. It is trading about $15 above that. So, it'd make it a lot more obvious if it actually did close below there to change that pivot. But for right now, just a potential. And if that were to happen, where would areas of interest be on a pullback? Well, let's do something like this, and we could find a higher low for Ethereum, maybe around 3450, 3380, 3300, somewhere around these major areas right there would be fair game. But here's the thing: Ethereum very similar on the monthly to Solana. I guess Solana is might be a little bit stronger, but Ethereum, again, opening essentially on the 5 exponential and rallying above it to start off the month. As long as it's above there, I have to be bullish. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to fucking green dildo their way to the moon from this exact number right here, but looking at it, you do have that higher low in place, and you do have several drives of hidden bullish evidence come off this last low. So this range, even whether it pulls back or not, very likely to get resolved to the upside over time. And the monthly time frame does again suggest, similar to what we saw on Solana. Look, if it takes out the current low, even of this month, or especially of last month, even just trades below there, there's a reversal going on, something else happening. You're probably going to find this thing back down around like 2,800, below 3,000. But again, with the market cycle in mind, with where everything else is in mind, I'm a lot more inclined to say that no, the bull run is actually still going, at least for another couple months, I'd suspect. And that would imply that this therefore should be the low. So any pullbacks again should be higher lows, if there even is a pullback, and continuation, above essentially the current highs of like 4,000. Where's your next target going to be? It's going to be in the 5,000s. It's going to be like 53, 5,500 or so. But that's still a little bit further away. But again, this is a lot more shaping up to be a continuation, especially when we look at the monthly right here. I mean, it's just a fucking uptrend is what it is. Low, high, high, low, higher, low, higher. I mean, it's already around the last prior high. So it doesn't really take too much to get a new high right there, thus continuation. Ethereum kind of setting up well there. If Ethereum actually does close above this range high here at 3720, let's call it 3720 on no less than a daily, really. At that point, I guess I'd look for an extension towards 3,900 or so. Not bad. Still, perhaps a pullback from there. But ultimately, the higher term time frame look is still more or less the same. Then we'll go over here to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is very interesting to me right now because this past week, I was suggesting that Bitcoin is more likely to pull back first before continuation later. And pullback targets that I was looking at were around 88,000 to as low as 86,000 bucks. Obviously, we've not seen that move. We saw a move down to about 91,000 bucks this past week, or I guess maybe about 91,000 bucks. But no actual break to new lows. So looking at the weekly right here, we can see that by the way, which is closing today, that Bitcoin, or the weekly, is trading above the median on the HPDR. If Bitcoin does reclaim that, I think the probability of Bitcoin making a new low below the current low of like 91,000 bucks is very unlikely, unless this thing really is bearish. But I don't think that it is. Do I still think that there could be a pullback here? Actually, I do. I looked at this again with fresh eyes today. And I was like, maybe I was a little bit too early to call myself wrong before. Realistically, I was looking at a likely high somewhere around 97.7 before. And I mean, on a closing basis, it only got up to about 98. So 300 bucks off, still on a lower high right here. It's right around the 38.2 level. I'm sure if we put on a Fibonacci retracement, it's probably around a major fib. Let's see. It's right. Whoops. Let's actually do that properly. Yeah, it's right around the 50% retracement level. So, again, if you're going to see a pullback, this would be a really good area for it. Again, I shouldn't say that you're guaranteed a pullback. You're not guaranteed a pullback here, obviously. But if you are going to see a pullback, I mean, this area does make sense. And if it does pull back, it could easily pull back down to like, I don't know, 95,000 bucks, maybe even 94,000 bucks. But obviously, that would be a higher low. So how could you judge that it actually is putting in a local high right there and likely to pull back potentially into that higher low that I'm kind of suggesting? Well, first, we can identify that there is that same sort of potential for hidden bearish divergence here on the daily time frame, the daily RSI making higher highs than what we saw back from the 25th of December. So that same sort of potential hidden bearish divergence is still there. And, now that I look at it, I mean, Bitcoin is still below that last lower high. So, while I am suggesting that I personally do think that there will be a pullback here, probably down to like 94 and 95. But again, I can be wrong in these. I reserve the right to be wrong. And as always, if I'm wrong, I take absolutely zero fucking responsibility. Anyways. But yeah, you have that same sort of hidden bearish divergence there. Again, higher term timeframes are good, but just the fact that it hasn't reconnected with the 5 exponential right here it will make me consider that there is a potential for a wick, at least a try a little bit lower first, and then a move to the upside. How will you know that I'm wrong? Well, in this case, I mean, Bitcoin's already at the 50% retracement. If it does trade up further north from there, probably looking at somewhere between 102 to 103 region. Again, I'd probably be looking for a pullback there as well. But again, higher lows from there. I wouldn't necessarily be like just full on fucking gung ho bullish for Bitcoin, looking for new all-time highs. And when I say new all-time highs, I mean, at least $114,000, as we'll go over in a minute. But where am I going with the statement? The statement that I'm trying to make is that I will be gung ho bullish with new all-time highs if Bitcoin can actually close above about $103,000. But until then, I still do think that this correction can kind of drag on a little bit longer. And I think it was a little bit too early yesterday in stating that I probably am wrong. It's very well possible that I could be wrong here. It's just I don't think it's been proven exactly just yet with this one. So I'll just be cognizant of this area right here. Again, if Bitcoin reclaims, then fair enough. Anyways, that is all second fiddle to the higher term time frame look. When we go over here to the 2-month time frame, again, the median is like a magnet for price action, especially after you got your first closure above there. Actually, the past couple closures have been just above the median on the bi-monthly chart. So very likely we at least see a test to that median, which is a $114,000. Again, that's a minimum test, and it's a 2-month time frame. So that would imply minimum before the end of February, Bitcoin at minimum sees $114,000 sometime before that. Obviously, that's a minimum target. I mean, if it reclaims, it can be a lot more. It can be a lot more than that. But for right now, that is something that I want to be having in the back of my mind as, a likely area of interest that we're very likely to see over this next little under 2 months time frame spread. So that's something I'd want to be aware of. Of course, it could pop up there, test there, hit the minimum target, and then sell off, and that start to look like a major high. But for right now, again, keeping everything in mind, I still think that probably it's better it is better to kind of err on the side of bullishness, just in general. So yeah, that's what we'll end off for today. Holy shit, a little bit longer than what I did plan for. Again, we got a sale going on right here. It's a little bit of a quiet start to this one. I'll be a little bit more loud about it tomorrow, on Monday, when everyone gets back to like their usual work and whatnot. The code is 2025, and the discount period will run for the next week. All right. As always, wishing you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.